Well, good afternoon, or whatever time of day it is where you are when you're listening to this. It's 4:44 in the afternoon on the last day of March in 2014, and this is my April Fool's message. And the title is No More April Fooling Around. I don't know who I was trying to fool by thinking I could convince people who are still blind to see what the truth is in regard to the changing of the system here on planet Earth. This is being accomplished by visionaries who realize that now is the only time to bring about real change, not some future generation. I've been depleting myself emotionally and physically in trying to convince others about the reality of what is happening. No one can see what they refuse to see. And that's not about me, folks. I see what I see. And those of you who choose to see something else, well, that's not my problem. The job of trying to change someone else's mind is the job of a fool. And I want to quit fooling around. Indeed, just being able to pick up whatever it was that depleted my body starting on Saturday evening and going into yesterday, although I did manage to go and hear my son play, and I'm feeling much better now, but I was really depleting myself, and I realized that, and others realized it, and were sending me advice, much of it very good advice, to take care of myself, because there's no point in getting myself all worked up and all run down, trying to convince people that Swiss Indo is what it says it is, that Mr. Sino is what he says he is. It's not my job to convince you or anybody else. And if you don't want to listen to me anymore, that's fine. I'm going to present what I feel is true, and I'm going to let it unfold the way it unfolds. It's not my job to create the changes that I know are happening. The how is not up to me. That's up to God. That's up to the universe. Whatever you want to call it, it's up to Creator to work with those of us who are creative spirits that are creating something brand new, something based on a foundation of truth rather than a foundation of fraud and lies. It's up to God to bring it about through us. We're putting forth our best effort as visionaries. We're listening to the best of our ability to our own hearts and trying to overcome the programming that we've all been programmed in. I don't care who we are. All of us have been programmed. All of us have been brainwashed. All of us have been turned inside out and upside down and on our head and just been discombobulated by a system that is totally fraudulent. It's not based on any truth. It's not based on any universal law. It's based on a make-believe law, make-believe money, make-believe governments, make-believe business institutions, make-believe structures that are all based on fraud and legal fictions. And it's all a fictional world that we've been living in. And if you don't want to believe that, that's not my problem. It's your problem. I'm telling you the truth. The whole world has been based on lies. Everything in our world has been based on the false premise, on false premises that we could be separate from each other, that what we do doesn't have an effect on anybody but us. We could protect ourselves by putting up shields and armor and stuff like that to protect ourselves from the world around us, and we could just have our own way, and it's all fear-based, and it's all false evidence appearing real fear. It's all been a fictional world that we've been living in, and I want to tell you something. It's changing. Swiss Indo is part of that change. New Earth Project is part of that change. Ubuntu is part of that change. The restoring of the Republic is part of that change, and not just in the United States, all over the world. The Republic is the only form of government that protects the rights of the people. All other forms are fraudulent and without true authority. They do not have authority. They have force, but force is being overcome by truth and by lights coming on. And if you can't see the lights coming on and you want to throw stones at those of us that are actually working to bring about real change, well then have at it. Put your own websites up. put your own Facebook pages up and create your own audience and spread your propaganda lies, even if you have a good heart and you don't want to believe what's really happening on the world. That's your problem. It's not mine. It's not my job to convince you, and I don't care who you are. It's your job to know for yourself and to be confident in your own mind. I'm not going to play the game as much as I can. I'm not going to fall into this role of trying to convince people to see what I see, because you're not going to see it until you're ready to see it. Just like if you had told me certain things that I believe are true today, if you had told me that 20 years ago or longer, if you had told me that 30 to 40 years ago when I was still a fundamentalist Christian, I would have thought you were nuts. There was no possible way in hell I would have been willing or able to see some of the things that I see now, because I wasn't ready then. And many of you may not be ready to see the things that I'm seeing now. And that's okay. That's part of your process. And you can have your process. It's not that you're wrong. It's just that you don't see what I see. And so I can't expect you to come to the same conclusions that I do, because all of the pieces that I'm seeing aren't in place for you. And you can't perceive what you haven't been enabled to perceive yet. When Jesus healed the blind man, he says, I see men as trees walking. Well, then he laid hands on him again, or whatever he did, and then he saw clearly. But again, it was a two-step process in that particular healing. First, there was seeing, but it wasn't clear seeing. And then the second stage, there was clear seeing, seeing aright, the way things really were. And that's the way it is in our world now. We have been totally programmed, totally indoctrinated with a set of beliefs. I mean, I have people that have talked to me about, for example, the banking thing. And when I say the banks didn't loan you money for your house or your car or your student loan or whatever loan the banks claimed to have loaned to you, none of that is true. But if you can't see it, I can't convince you. I can't convince you that they actually took your value, monetized it, gave it back to you in a form of a loan that they claimed to be a loan to you, but you were really loaning them your value and allowing them to capitalize on your value, and it was all a fraud. It was all non-valid, invalid, null and void contract called a mortgage. It had nothing to do with truth or reality, and everything in the corporate world is fiction. Everything in the corporate world is a lie, it's a fraud, it's a deception, it's a crime. The basis of all crime in the world is the fictional system in which we live that creates criminals on purpose by programming and brainwashing people to believe the lie is real. But it's not real. And I'm a fool to think that I can convince you to see what you're not ready to see yet. And I need to take care of Ron. I need to take care of me and do the job that I've been sent here to do. Mr. Sugi believes that the delegates were all called by God and put in the position of becoming delegates to help bring peace to the world. Now, some of you don't want to believe that. You're offended by the fact that he's a king, or even claims to be a king. Well, we're all kings, and he just happens to have the lineage of a king. Okay? He just happens to be in that lineage that goes back. And if you read the history of banking, an Asian perspective, you will know the story. If you haven't read it, if you haven't studied it, then you are clueless. And it's okay, and you don't have to be convinced. If it offends you that he's the King of Kings, if that offends you and you think only Jesus can be the King of Kings, or only some mystical figure coming down out of the sky can be the King of Kings and not manifest in the way all other humans are manifested, well, if that's what you want to believe, that's what you want to believe. And I'm not going to try to convince you otherwise. It's not what I see. I see God working through actual incarnated human beings the way God has always worked. Incarnation is the way of it. God manifests as human, and he does it over and over and over again, male and female. He does it again and again and again. She does it again and again and again. And it's the incarnation process. You're not going to manifest spiritual reality in a physical world except by becoming physical. That's just the way it is. And if you can't see that yet, you will in due time or not. It's not up to me. And how all of this unfolds and brings about the changes that will be visible to everybody so that everybody can say, oh, now I get it. However that happens is up to God, or whatever we call the prime source or creator or the universe or the cosmos. It's all a plan. It's been a plan for a long time. We are tired of hearing the word wait. I know, me too. We're tired of it, but it is a process. It is a process that's unfolding. And I can't make it unfold any faster by trying to convince people to see what I see when they don't have the capability in this point in time. Just as I didn't have the capability at a point in time to believe in reincarnation, for example, when I was younger. I didn't have the capability of believing that I, too, was the Son of God, that I, too, was a Christ. I didn't have the capability of understanding that Buddha was not anti-Christ or against Christ. I did not have the capability of understanding that Muslims or Islam is not anti-Christian. I did not have the capability of understanding a lot of things. I didn't understand unity. I didn't understand what reconciliation was. I didn't understand what integrating the opposites was. It was what I was programmed with. But over time, gradually, I began to see more and more and more things. And that's what's going to happen with most people, if not all people. And it's not up to me. I'd like to save every last person on the planet, including the Illuminati, including the darkest figures on the earth. I'd just like to get them to stop playing their fraudulent games. I'd like to get them to stop playing their violent games. I'd like to get them to stop living their lives hurting others, because they're only ultimately hurting themselves, because we cannot hurt anyone else and be unaffected by that. It always comes back upon us, always. I like the video that I shared today on my channel. Let's see if I can find it here. It's called We Are From the Future. And everything is going to be all right. The future is a beautiful place, but you will need some training in order to get. Oh, I gotta close this. In order to get there. Okay, that's the opening lines, the opening words from that video. We are from the future. How can we be from the future? Well, it only takes one person to get through, and lots of us, I think, are breaking through. And we're going through blindfolded. That's the image that it paints. We're going through blindfolded, and it's a mission impossible. But we're accomplishing that mission impossible. We're not waiting till some future generation to do it. We're doing it right now. We're changing the world. We're changing it back to a basis of common law. We're changing the financial system. We're changing the system of governance. We're changing the system of religion. We're changing everything, because everything has been based on lies, and we're trying to base everything on the truth as we allow the truth to unfold within and through us. We're allowing that unfolding to take place, and it's not our job to convince others. It's just our job to let our light shine and to tell the truth as best we can. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to, as much as possible, not enter into arguments. I don't want to enter into being put in a position where I have to prove something and come up with some kind of an explanation that will satisfy your mind because you don't get it. It's not my job, and I'm not going to play that foolhardy game that I've been trying to play and busting my head against a wall for nothing over it and wearing myself out emotionally and physically so that I am not at peace. I'm not at peace because I think it's up to me. It's not up to me. It's up to God. I do my part and let God do his, and his is the bigger part, not mine. Mine is just to do the little steps and the little jobs that I'm able to do day by day and just walk as best I can and trust that the outcome will be what God has planted in my heart for it to be. a world that works for everyone, where there is truth and justice and peace and prosperity for everyone. And how God does that is up to God. If it requires still a little bit more separation, well, that's God's choice. I personally would not make that choice. I would not leave anybody behind. But we're not going to wait. For those of you that don't want to catch up, we can't wait for you, because now is the time that we've got to do this. Not some tomorrow, but now. And it's unfolding, and the process is accelerating, and it's going to be what it's going to be. You're going to see it as it unfolds, and that's the best I can tell you. I'm thankful for the long talk that I had with Rena today. I'm having a talk, a radio show is going to be recorded tomorrow. It will be on. I'll share the link whenever it is, with India, and it's going to be with Rena and Peter and myself. I believe it's just the three of us. I'm not sure. It'll probably be at least a one, possibly a 2-hour program. I'm not sure. But there's lots of things coming out. Go with what resonates with you. If it doesn't resonate with you, leave it alone. Just leave it alone. And don't expect me to answer your critical questions, because sometimes most of the time, I don't have an answer that will ever satisfy you. And that's just the way it is. I'm tired of being a fool and trying to convince you, any one of you, to change your mind. Thank you for listening. Namaste.